Hey y'all, it's the Brogster. Today I'm talking about Amor Fati. Amor Fati is translated as a love of fate in Latin. I stole this from Wikipedia, but it's too good. I had to steal it. It is used to describe an attitude in which one sees everything that happens in one's life, including suffering and loss, as good. It's basically this extreme love of life. Um, Usually we live our lives where we say we have good moments and bad moments, and we don't like the bad moments and we like the good moments. And we try to basically get as many good moments as possible. This idea of Amor Fati is basically to see all of it as good, to practice like seeing all of it as good, to basically love all of it. It's this crazy idea from this philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. He's a German philosopher who led a very troubled life, troubled fate. He came up with this idea of Amor Fati. I hope it helped him cope with this terrible life because he lived a horrible life. I hope he could love all of it. So let's get into it. Friedrich Nietzsche wrote that my formula for greatness in a human being is Amor Fati. That one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. Not merely bear what is necessary, still less conceal it, but love it. The idea of loving fate is the opposite of our go-to mode for reacting to negative events. When something terrible happens, we don't love it. Uh, we uh, we bear it, as he describes. He says, not merely bear what is necessary, and so we kind of bear it. We tolerate it. We resent it. We deal with it reluctantly. We deal with bad times reluctantly, and so we kind of fate. We kind of fight fate and wish things would have happened differently instead of accepting the situation and loving it. Now, this is a very radical idea, um, and it's a crazy one. To not like wish things to be different, but to just be happy with the way things are. To love like whatever your fate ends up being. Well, maybe you're fated to get in a car crash. Nietzsche would say, well, you got to enjoy it. Maybe you're fated to lose your job. Well, you got to find a way to enjoy that too. You got to love all of it. And so, Fati's this idea of loving life to such an extreme that you don't fight the bad times. Really, you're not reluctantly going through them. You're you're loving it somehow. It's crazy. It's kind of this idea of openly saying to all of life, "I love it." And so he says, not merely bear what is necessary, but love it. So what does he mean by that? Not merely bear what is necessary, but love it. Well, hardship is what he means is necessary. What is necessary? It's suffering, because in life you're gonna suffer a little bit, and it's necessary. And so what we oftentimes do, we tolerate it, we bear it. Nietzsche didn't really want us to do that. So this whole idea is that we shouldn't see suffering or loss as bad. But why shouldn't we? So we often wish things to be different when we're suffering or we lost something. And so number one, you don't know what your life could be like if things changed the way you wanted them to. Maybe you'd be worse off. And so what Nietzsche talks about is we don't appreciate like the sequence of events and how suffering was necessary for us to get to the good times. And we cast away suffering even though we needed it to like improve and stuff. And two, there's no way for your life to be any different. Life is inherently linked with suffering, so you can't cast away suffering, and you can't if you can ignore it as long as you want, but that can just make things worse. You're just going to suffer more by trying to ignore conflict or trying to ignore something you have to deal with. And so Nietzsche wants us to love it and overcome it, not to hide away. That's why he says not to conceal it. He doesn't want us to try and conceal suffering, try to hide away from it, or try to hide our suffering. He wants us to overcome it and face it. And three, we can't know the good without the bad. I mean, that goes with number one, but we literally, Nietzsche keeps talking about how, well, he's dead, but he wrote about how we don't appreciate the sequence of events. We don't appreciate how many things had to line up perfectly for us to be where we are now. How we had to suffer to get the good stuff in our lives. Like we just try and cast away suffering when it's so necessary for our life and how we grow as a person, how we become better. And even if you can't become better with whatever suffering or loss is in your life, that's just I think you can become better because you can better deal with stress and anxiety. Even if you can't like morally improve as a person, you can just learn to better deal with stress and anxiety and learn to be a person who better deals with those things. And we shouldn't see it as suffering or loss as bad because most of the time, given perspective, we see for suffering is what it is. We see it as necessary. We say, I needed this. You can look back and say it was beneficial to go through that suffering. So we need to have that perception now. We we don't need to wait to have that idea. We need to understand the role suffering has in our life better because it seems like some people they just like try and hide from it. And Nietzsche doesn't want us to do that. We need to face it. We need to overcome it and love all of life because suffering is just as necessary as the good times. It's just as much a part of life as the good times are in life. The good times are just the bad times and the good times are equally part of life. Like we can't cast any of them out. We gotta love them both. That's basically the idea of Amor Fati in a nutshell. All right, now for part 2 of this video, where I basically just like ramble on my thoughts about this idea. Well, basically, I love this idea. I love Amor Fati. Now, why do I love it? I love it because when I look at other people living their lives, I see them placing their happiness on two things: physical objects and goals, or otherwise known as destinations. They're trying to get somewhere. They want to achieve something. But basically, they by doing this, they wish life to be different. I wish I had achieved this. I wish I had this thing. They want things to be a certain way. But fate can get in the way of those goals to have stuff or achieve something. At the end of the day, you can't control your fate, and maybe it just doesn't work out. You can't buy that thing, that car, or you can't achieve that goal. Maybe it just doesn't work out. And then what happens as a result of that is you're unhappy because that's what you've placed your happiness on. You've placed your happiness on circumstances. And circumstances can change, and they're not necessarily going to change the way you want them to. And so I don't really want to do that. So I like this idea because it's helped me find happiness. And I don't want to I don't want to be like everyone else. I don't want to place my happiness on things or destinations, which I see so many people do. I don't want to place my happiness on a goal like whether or not I can squat 300 pounds, which is something I want to do. I want to be happy if I can't do that. Or I don't want to be unhappy if I can't get a thing like a Ford Crown Victoria Police Interceptor. Like I want that thing, but at the end of the day, I want to be happy if I can't get that thing. I want to be happy with whatever my life ends up being. I want to be happy with whatever my life ends up being. Even if I can't get a Ford Crown Victoria Police Interceptor, I strive for goals like still, like I'm not doing nothing. Like I'm not just letting things happen around me and just saying, yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm still trying to do stuff, trying to get stuff and achieve things, but at the end of the day, I'm going to be happy if that doesn't happen. Like one of my goals is to get a Ford Crown Victoria Police Interceptor, but at the end of the day, if I don't get it, I still want to be happy. So no matter what happens, I want to love my fatal. And so I see wishing too greatly for a destination or a thing is basically throwing your happiness away, as making yourself unhappy by your own thinking, by basically deciding that you'll be less happy or you won't be happy at all if you don't have this thing or that thing. I don't want to throw my happiness away. I don't want to place my happiness on that. I want to be happy with whatever comes to me. So with this idea, Amor Fati, I'm not throwing away my happiness. I love this idea because it's how I found the most happiness and contentment. Because I just practice, loving whatever comes my way and not wanting so much. Deciding that whatever does end up happening as a result of my efforts and everyone else's efforts and just everything happening, whatever happens as a result of stuff is what I'm happy with. So I love this because in other words, it's suggesting unconditional happiness, while conditional happiness seems to be everywhere. Everyone seems to be caught up with some conditional version of happiness. We're either obsessed with we're all obsessed with some ideal version of our lives that we're all striving for, and we get upset when we don't reach that. Well, I don't. My ideal version of my life would just be to be happy with whatever comes my way. That's the only thing I want. Whatever happens, I want to be happy with. And that's why I like this principle because unconditional happiness is a pretty cool concept when conditional happiness is everywhere. And so here's a quote from Epictetus. He's a Stoic. He was a slave, for context, and based on his writings, he seemed like he was a pretty happy dude, despite um, being a slave and like a cripple. He writes, sick and yet happy, in peril and yet happy, dying and yet happy, in exile and happy, in disgrace and happy. So no matter what, happy. It's not love your fate if you're rich, or love your fate if you have good health. It's love your fate, whatever it is. Imagine being happy regardless of whatever your fate is, whatever your life has in store for you. Imagine being happy with whatever your life has in store for you. Whether you're rich or poor, sick or in good health, in disgrace or not, or whatever. Imagine being happy with whatever life throws at you, where most would complain and resent it. I would love to be able to do that, and that's basically my one goal. It's my one destination is for that. So I love this principle because it's unconditional happiness in a world full of conditional happiness. People seem to be obsessed with a destination or some physical object. My one destination is just to completely love my fate. But is that even possible? Is it ever possible to get a state where you can enjoy every aspect of life? Loss, loneliness, death, failure, disaster? Well, I don't believe so. So, should we even try? I think this is like an ideal, an unreachable goal, but one that we should still try to get to. It's like, I don't know, it's like maybe godliness. Like, we're humans, we can't become godly, but be cool to try. If we could get a little bit of godliness or mimic that in a way, it'd still be better than not. And so, even if it's not impossible to completely embody the idea of Amor Fati, having a little bit of a Amor Fati mindset would be better than a no Amor Fati mindset. And why would that be? Because more Amor Fati means more happiness, because it's not dependent on anything. Less Amor Fati means less happiness because it's dependent on other circumstances that you can't control. And so, like, an example of that is a little bit of Amor Fati would be like more accepting of suffering in life. You'd see like failures as challenges to overcome and learn from. Um, or like if you experience loss, you would be like, this loss allows me to appreciate what I've been taking for granted. You'd see some good in the suffering and in loss with a little bit of an Amor Fati mindset. But within a complete Amor Fati mindset, you'd you'd say, I love literally all of existence somehow. Like literally, you're just completely in love with existence completely, all the way to your death. Which kind of not possible, but if we could get that a little bit of a more Fati mindset, that'd be awesome. That's a good mindset to have. So although impossible, trying to embody this mindset is better than not at all. A little Amor Fati is better than no Amor Fati. So how do we do it? Well, Nietzsche doesn't really say how to do it. He kind of is just like philosophizing the whole time, so he can't really tell you how to do it. He's just like kind of just talking about the idea and not how to do the idea. So here's kind of what I've done. It's pretty simple. So basically, you gotta learn to not wish so much, not wish things to be different. There's a song called Amor Fati, and there's a lyric in that song that goes, everything is as it is, just as it should be. And then it goes, Amor Fati, woo! But basically, everything is as it is, just as it should be. So you should stop wishing for things to be different so often. You basically need to get comfortable with what's right in front of you and not wanting things to be different. So do not, here's another quote from Epictetus. Do not seek for things to happen the way you want them to. Rather wish that what happens, happen the way it happens. Then you will be happy. That quote is hard to read. And so I think another thing that you have to do, probably before you do that, is accept that most things are out of your control. And don't worry about things that are. So that's a idea from Stoicism. You accept that most things are outside your control, circumstances. All you can really control is your body and your mind. But maybe not even your body if it like stops working on you. But you gotta accept what you can control and not really care so much about what you can't. And you gotta challenge your perception of events and basically try to find the good from it. Instead of like wallowing in despair when you're like faced with hardship, you got to find some reason that it's good, and not just tolerate it, but love it. And that sounds really hard, but you guys got to challenge the perception of events, find something good from it. And you got to stop complaining. If everything is like as it is, just as it should be, which is a good summary of this idea, then you don't need to complain. So stop it. I don't think that's a good habit if you want to maintain this idea. If you're going to love your fate, there's no reason for you to complain. That's basically some things that I thought of that basically I do. There's a lot more. I could make a whole like series on how I'm trying to completely love my fate. But that's basically quick 4 things. But remember, we aren't perfect. We're humans. And I would say it's impossible for us to completely enjoy our fate all the time. But this is a good ideal that I think we should all strive for. But that's it. Thanks for watching. I hope you gained something from this video. Goodbye. I'll see you in the next one.